It is Thursday, May 1st, and new polling has dropped showing President Trump stomping Democrats and any potential Dem challenger. Trump and Republicans beating the pants off Democrats on the economy, on immigration, trust in which party's better to lead our country. Again, Trump whipping the Democrats. Wait till you see this. Also, the president securing full future repayment of the hundreds of billions of dollars the Biden administration gave to Ukraine, gifted to Ukraine over the last 4 years, securing and signing the mineral rights deal. The contract has been signed by the government of Ukraine, and it is a big win for the United States. And Stephen Miller unloading on the press this morning at the White House press briefing, setting the record straight after Kamala Harris's embarrassing speech yesterday. We're going to show you that and more stories as well from around the country. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel. And consider subscribing so you don't miss these regular updates. Trump marking his 100 days in office with a huge win for this country, achieving a major milestone in wrapping up the Ukraine-Russia war. President Zelensky and the Ukrainian parliament signing the mineral rights deal agreed to by their parliament. The Trump administration has been waiting for months to get this deal signed. Trump making sure Zelensky knew the U.S. is done. We're walking away, washing our hands with you if this agreement is not signed. And finally, last night, Ukraine signing the dotted line, a deal which secures the U.S. first rights and priority access over all natural resource projects in the country of Ukraine, including all minerals, hydrocarbons, and even related infrastructure development that takes place to rebuild their country. What this means is all existing and new rare earth deposits. If a huge deposit of lithium or cobalt is found in Ukraine, it will be an American energy company who obtains the rights before anyone else to mine that resource. America securing first priority mineral and energy rights in their whole country, in all of Ukraine. Now, you may be wondering, why on earth would Ukraine agree to this? Well, President Trump asked for this deal as means of repayment for the hundreds of billions of dollars that the Biden administration gifted them over the last few years. Hundreds of billions in U.S. tax dollars given to Ukraine to fight their war. This deal means our money no longer just wasted and squandered, but was an investment to provide the U.S. access to rare earth minerals critical to our national security. And Russia is furious that Ukraine agreed to sign this deal. The Kremlin releasing a statement this morning blasting Trump over this, saying Trump has finally pressured Kyiv to pay for U.S. aid with mineral resources. The country that's about to disappear will have to use its national wealth to pay for military supplies. Last night, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent meeting with the Ukrainian First Deputy Prime Minister to sign and ink the deal in person. Marco Rubio now notifying Congress this morning of its intent to sell $50 million in military equipment to Ukraine. The first time Trump will be providing new aid since his inauguration. But unlike the Biden administration, Ukraine will be paying us for these weapons, benefiting both Kyiv's defense and the U.S. defense industry without spending a cent of American tax dollars.
You got the deal with Zelensky on the minerals. That means the United States is going to have a presence in Ukraine. Is that going to inhibit Putin, do you think?
Well, it could, but the reason I did that is that we're in for $350 billion or close to it, whereas Europe is only in it for $100 billion.
All right, so we get some of our investment back. All right,
I felt very foolish. You know, they loaned the money, and Biden handed them $350 billion in between cash and military equipment. 350, we got nothing, and I felt very foolish being the head of a country where Europe gets their money back, and it's a much smaller amount, and we get nothing. So I went to them and said, look, we got to get rare earth. They have great rare earth, meaning certain minerals, materials. They have things that a lot of places don't have. It's a big asset that they have. And we made a deal today where we get, much more in theory than the $350 billion. but I wanted to be protected. I didn't want to be out there and look foolish. And this is not my war. This is Biden's war. I'm just trying to stop it. But the reason I want it stopped is they're losing 5,000 young soldiers every single week on average. Russian and Ukrainian. They're not American, but they're human beings, and it's so sad to see it. So I want to stop the war.
It's thinking like this, leadership that puts America first, that has the president and his party beating the pants off Democrats. Brand new polling showing 100 days in how voters feel with their choice. Is there any buyer's remorse about voting for Trump over Kamala Harris? Voting the Republicans into the majority over the Democrats. We've been hearing that for weeks. Democrats and the media keep saying people regret their votes. Is that true? Not even a little. Roll the tape.
Who would be doing a better job as president? Guess who comes out on top? Within the margin of error, but comes out on top. This looks a lot like the election result, right? Trump 45%, 2 points ahead of Harris at 43%. 12% say they'd be doing about the same. But this is the key nugget here. It's not just about regretting that vote. It's literally saying who would be doing the better job right now. And Trump continues to score a higher percentage of the vote than Kamala Harris. This looks a heck of a lot like the election result. We have just seen this in poll after poll after poll. Despite the fact that Trump's favorable ratings aren't too hot to trot, when he's matched up against who he was matched up in 2024, he still, across the polls, scores a higher percentage than Kamala Harris does.
Even if they don't know exactly what she would have done, they still went for Donald Trump. Okay, what about when he's matched up against congressional Democrats, who we know have had some pretty rough numbers?
Yeah, they have had some pretty rough numbers. So Kamala Harris obviously doesn't hold elected office right now, but Democrats in Congress sure do. So who do you trust more on the U.S. main problems, the main problems in the United States? Well, what do we have here? It's the same exact picture, folks. It's the same exact picture. When you match Donald Trump against his actual competition, Donald Trump comes out ahead. Look at this. 40% to congressional Democrats, 32%. Going to make a big circle here. But the bottom line is, when you look at Donald Trump in a vacuum, it's one thing. But when you actually match him up against folks in the real world, all of a sudden his numbers look considerably better. And when you match him up against his main competition at this point, Democrats in Congress, he is more trusted on the main problems facing the United States right now. In fact, it's not even close. It's an 8-point advantage, which in this politics, well, that's a wide ocean.
It's huge, and maybe tells the Democrats that their messaging is not working at this point in time. All right, speaking of the big issues, which party is better trusted when it comes to things like the economy and immigration still?
Right. Okay. So we kind of talk about it a little bit up here when we match up Donald Trump against the Democrats in Congress. But what about the parties up against each other, right? Donald Trump has not seen those favorable polls when it comes to the economy, when it comes to immigration. But look here, which party has a better plan? And this is the margin among registered voters. Look at this on immigration. The GOP crushes the Democrats. Look at that. That's a 19-point edge. My goodness gracious. You rarely ever see leads like that in politics these days. How about on the economy, where Donald Trump's numbers have been struggling a little bit? But even there, Republicans hold a 9-point lead. If Democrats think that at this particular point, just because Donald Trump is unpopular, that they're going to run away with it like a Heisman Trophy winner, that is not necessarily the case. These numbers should be a major wake-up call for Democrats. Despite Donald Trump's unpopularity in the polls, when you actually go up against him and you put Democrats' names against him, when you put Republicans as a whole up against him, Republicans and Donald Trump do considerably better. And that is why Democrats, in fact, cannot count their chickens just yet, because those eggs have not cracked at this particular moment.
I think you said the pivotal thing, the important thing, which is Democrats are not going to be running away with anything. They have to start thinking about what their message is going forward.
That's exactly right, because at this point, the Democratic message ain't selling a thing.
All right.
I never get tired of watching CNN of all outlets having to report these numbers. Then this morning, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer holding a press conference of his own to highlight Trump's poll numbers, cherry-picking the numbers to make it look like Trump's not the most popular president we've had in decades. Schumer, though, learning the hard way, you shouldn't throw stones when you live in a glass house. Remember his poll numbers? Watch this.
Americans are noticing. The polls this week show Trump has the lowest 100-day approval rating since they started polling 80 years ago, the lowest. Even worse, 72% of Americans think it's likely that Trump's handling of the economy will walk us directly into a recession. People who hate what Trump is proposing. Yes.
There was a poll out today that has your approval ratings lower than any other congressional leader at 17%. Are you concerned that you may be a liability for your party?
Polls come and go. Our party is united. We're on our front foot. We're stepping forward, going after Trump, and having real success. Yes.
The latest polling has congressional Democrats holding the all-time polling record for the worst, the lowest approval in congressional polling history. A new CNN poll from today has Chuck Schumer's approval at just 17%, which means both parties, Republicans and his own party, Democrats, hate the job he's doing. In another story, President Trump has fired his national security advisor, Mike Waltz, terminating Waltz and Waltz's advisor, Alex Wong. The media's reporting that they resigned. They resigned because Trump asked for their resignations. Mike Waltz was the person responsible for Signalgate, adding that Trump-hating Atlantic reporter to that NSC chat thread last month. But from what I understand, Trump firing him had to do a lot more with just his all-around job performance. There's a serious vetting crisis at the NSC, at the National Security Council. Waltz has been failing to vet the people that he hires. Multiple anti-Trump security officials being hired, leaks constantly coming from Waltz's office. And apparently, Waltz has been trying to manipulate the administration into a harder stance with Iran. He's a war hawk. He'd rather go to war with Iran than solve the nuclear issue diplomatically, something Trump is thoroughly opposed to. Mark Alperin reporting this morning, citing 3 good sources, that Trump's been unhappy with Waltz for months, well before Signalgate. And in fact, Signalgate may have saved Waltz's job, as Trump didn't want to be seen as giving in to the media when all of that was reported. Watch.
So this morning, just to take you a little bit behind the curtain, I was headed into my location to do the program, and I got a text from a very nice source who said, "You want to call me?" And it turns out that 3 different people, 2, the original source and 2 others, have confirmed that the plan now by the White House is to remove the National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, who was on Fox News this morning, just not that long ago, and his deputy, Alex Wong, and much of the current staff team at the National Security Council, because of unhappiness throughout the national security establishment of how they're doing. The West Wing's unhappy, the State Department, the Treasury, unhappiness. And of course, this was around before Signalgate. It was widely reported that Signalgate, ironically, may have saved Waltz's job because the president didn't want to be seen as if he were giving in to Jeffrey Goldberg, his new best friend. But there's lots of levels of unhappiness, and it's less about Signalgate than it is about, as I understand it from my sources, a general belief that it's not being run efficiently in an organized way. It may not. It may happen as early as today. It may not happen ever because it's Donald Trump. But the plan is for it to happen soon, maybe this weekend. One source says this weekend. We'll see. But the original choice to replace the National Security Advisor for many in the government was a guy named Christopher Landau. He's currently the Deputy Secretary of State. He is said to be doing such a good job and is so valuable to Marco Rubio that Rubio says, no, you can't have my guy. So he's got job lock because he's doing well. Some people have experienced that. You know what that's like. So Landau, I'm told, will not get the job, even though he's very highly thought of because he's so highly thought of. A candidate that's being discussed who has support at very high levels within the administration is Steve Witkoff, the president's friend and special envoy to everything. Witkoff has a lot of senior level support, but he also has enemies. And 2 of my 3 sources pointed me to this, a New York Post story that ran yesterday. Very strange story popped up in the New York Post in the middle of the day yesterday, savaging Steve Witkoff with anonymous quotes saying he's way over his head. He shouldn't be leading the Russian negotiations, that other countries are confused by him, that people in the government think he's amateurish. The story was filled with savage blind quotes. Do we have the money quote, Paul? I don't know if we do or not. There we go. Nice guy, but a dumbling effing idiot, this person said of Witkoff. He should not be doing this alone, meaning negotiating these deals. Now, will his critics be more happy with him as head of the NSC? Not according to my sources. And they believe that some people believe that the reason the Post story popped up was because word was beginning to spread that Waltz was out and that Witkoff was his likely replacement. And what the speculation is, this New York Post story is aiming at stopping that.
In another story, this morning's White House press briefing got a bit tense as Stephen Miller took the podium to lay out and explain how America's fighting its way back to common sense and blasting the media over their utter failure to accurately and fairly cover Trump's progress with immigration. This coming after Kamala Harris's disgraceful speech yesterday where she criticized Trump's handling of immigration, accusing Trump of being heartless toward immigrants and unworthy of being the president of the United States. A former vice president criticizing the current administration is something you really don't do. And this was coming from the border czar, the former border czar who let over 10 million illegals enter this country. Watch what happened this morning at the press briefing. Watch Stephen Miller set the record straight. This guy's a beast. Roll the tape.
The only thing Americans want to hear from Kamala Harris is an apology for joining Joe Biden, and remember she was the border czar, joining Joe Biden in aiding and abetting the invasion of our country. And we're never going to stop talking about this because what they did to this country is unforgivable. It is an eternal stain on the Democrat Party. Every day we read another story. Every day we arrest another alien they let into this country who raped a child, who beat a woman within an inch of her life, who murdered a mom, who murdered a dad, who trafficked drugs into this country, who trafficked fentanyl into this country, who are responsible for dead and slaughtered Americans. And I don't know what's broken in the Washington press corps, that none of that moves them emotionally. The only thing that gets them exercised is, do we need to have more trials for terrorist supporters? We need to have more trials for gangbangers. We need to have more trials for illegal alien invaders, even though Congress and the Constitution clearly say that you can expel invaders and illegal aliens quickly, efficiently, and properly. This president has literally saved America, and I could not be prouder. I could not be prouder, as I know Caroline feels the same way, to come every single day to this building where we have a leader sitting in that office whose first, last, and every thought is the safety, prosperity, security, and sovereignty of the citizens. That's an important word, people. Citizens of this republic.
All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.